All right, cool. Thank you for being here today. What I'm gonna be doing today is I'm gonna be talking about string bending, and I'm gonna try and give you some tips and some ideas regarding string bending. And the reason is I know most of us have talked about string bending, or you've been, introduced to it and that sort of thing. But what I find when I do lessons and things like that is that a lot of my students still view the essential techniques like string bending, sliding, vibrato, things like that. They still approach them from a very nervous standpoint. And the big thing about playing is you want to make sure that when you go to play, you feel confident, okay? That's one of the big things. It isn't who's fastest and who knows more scales and who knows more theory. That's a game you're never going to win anyway. It's more about when you grab the guitar and you play, do you feel good? And what's coming out of your fingers and out of your guitar amp or whatever it is it making people respond? That's what you're looking for. And so I like to go back to things like string bending and vibrato and different things like that and just reiterate the importance of these things and making sure that you're doing them correctly. So when you go to actually play, you're learning how important they are. It's not just that you are doing a particular technique, it's how you're doing it that makes all the difference in the world. How does it feel and how does it sound? That's what you're looking for, okay? So the first thing we're going to do here is we're just going to talk about the technique of bending. So if you've got a guitar handy, please go ahead and grab it, and hopefully it's tuned up. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a bunch of different kinds of bends, but the first thing we need to understand is that the point of a bend is that you're taking a note that we'll call static on the guitar. Something that you're not bending or doing anything with, just a static note, okay? And what you're going to do is you're going to bend that up to something else. And it's crucial that when you do that bend, you're actually reaching the point that you need to get to. So what we're going to do is we're just going to look at A minor pentatonic. Most of you know I tend to just use A minor pentatonic all the time because it's a nice, easy place for everybody to start, and we can all learn this stuff together, okay? So what we're going to do here is we're going to take this A minor pentatonic, and we're going to go to the 7th fret of the 3rd string. And what we're going to do is we're going to put our 3rd finger on that. We're going to take our middle finger and place it on the 6th fret of the 3rd string as well, and put your 1st finger on the 5th fret of the 3rd string as well. So you've got all 3 of these on the same string, okay? So now what you're going to do is, and again, if you do this a little bit differently, don't worry about it. If you've got a way that's working for you, that's perfectly fine. I just want to give you some ideas of how I do things and how I was taught to do them and the reasons behind them. So what we're going to do here is the thumb is going to come over, and I'm going to turn just a second here, and you can see my wrist is a bit in this upward position. I'm not sitting down like this. I'm up like this. And what I want to do is I want to take that 7 and I want to bend it until it sounds like a 9. We call that a whole step bend or a 2-fret bend, okay? So I'm going to take that. I got to think about that note in my head. And I want to bend it up until I hear that sound. So the first step here is learning that what you're going to do when you do these bends, any of these bends, is you're going to be turning your hand like you're opening a doorknob, okay? Your thumb is over the top, and you're grabbing on like this, and then you're turning or rocking your wrist like this behind the guitar neck. Now, I know people that try and bend like this, okay, with their wrist down like this, and I'm not going to say that it's wrong if it's working for you. I have always had a problem with bending like this because there's more variable involved. I'm less apt to do it correctly every time. It's harder for me to get it to be accurate, and what I just played right there is not what you want, okay? So the trick here is if I grab on, I can learn how much to turn. I can be using my fingers to control that string, and I'm using my forearm, my wrist and my forearm, to bend it up. I'm using the muscle of this, and of course using my ear to bend it up to the right pitch. So the first thing I want you to do is just get comfortable with bending up to the pitch that you're looking for, okay? So again, this isn't about how fast you can do it and then get off to something else. You know, that's a whole nother conversation, but it's when you are doing the bend to make sure that it's effectively reaching its point. In this case, we're bending up 2 frets or a whole step, so that 7 becomes a 9. Now the question comes up, well, why are you bending to a 9? Because the 9 is also a note in the pentatonic scale. It's the same as a 5 on the second string. So all I'm doing is bending from one pentatonic note to the next pentatonic note. Okay? Now, if you have problems, I can see in some of the chats that sometimes it hurts when you do bending. Well, there's two things to that. Number one, it may hurt a little while until you get comfortable with it. You've got to build strength in those fingertips, in those fingers. But another thing that you can do is if you've just started learning how to do bending, and it's kind of new for you, maybe go to a lighter gauge of string until you get comfortable with it. And then you could go back to a little bit thicker gauge. Again, it's different for everybody, but if you've got, thicker strings on your guitar, it makes the process of actually bending a lot harder. So if it is, and you really want to learn how to do this, maybe just try and lower the strings, make the strings a bit thinner until you learn how to do it, and then if you want to, you can certainly go back, okay? So you're bending that up. So right now we're just talking about the art of the bend, the technique of actually trying to bend, okay? So we're turning that up. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go to the second string. We have 5 and 8 on the second string, right? Pentatonic. So where that 8 is, we're going to put our third finger on there as well, on the second string, 8th fret, and we're going to put the other two fingers behind it just like we just did, and we're going to bend that up a whole step as well. And again, reach that point. Don't be too low or too high. Okay, find that spot. Okay, and then we've also got the same thing on the first string. We have 5th and 8th frets. We're going to bend that 8 up until it sounds like a 10. Now, if you've never done the first string bend before, the first string is a little bit tricky because it's actually the hardest one to bend. It's the thinnest string, but it has the most tension. So you really got to bend that sucker up to get what you want, okay? So that's step one, is just practicing the technique of the bend itself. Getting comfortable with being able to put the 3 fingers on there, turning, and making that twist, being able to get it up as far as you need, using the muscles from your forearm and from your wrist. Now, here's something else that I see a lot of questions about, okay? When you bend it, you will inevitably run into the string above it, okay? See that? Now, what I do is when I bend, I get the next string up, I get it kind of on the top of my third finger. That's where it winds up resting. So as I bend up, and then bring it back down, okay, I get that string on the top there, and that's kind of how I control that. Now, there's a lot of stuff involved in string bending. There's lots of different kinds of string bending, and I'm going to show you a few different things today, but I want to remind you, first of all, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done that. Please share with somebody else that might need the help in their playing, which would be great. And if you are interested in learning more about these kind of techniques, you can always go over to GuitarZoom.com and check out some of the stuff that I've got and see if there's something that might work for you. Okay? So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at some different kinds of bends. Okay? We're going to look at whole step bends, which we just did, and various different ways of exploring those, which we're going to do right now. And then we're going to look at half step bends, blues bends, and 3-fret bends, okay? So with this whole step bend that we're doing right now, if you've got your guitar handy, head on back over to the 7th fret of the 3rd string and get prepared, okay? And what I want you to remember about bending is you're going to bend up, but you can also bend back down. So you could bring the note up and come back down. So when you're playing a lick, you might go, and then you throw in a lick where you're bending up and you're coming back down. Okay? Or you might just play something where you're going to bend up and then you're going to leave. See that? How I bent it up and then I left. Now, before I go any further, here's what I really want you to think about. Again, as I just said when we started, techniques like bending and vibrato and hammer-ons and pull-offs and slides and all these different kinds of things, it's not enough to just know that you should be doing them and do them on occasion. It's a matter of really harnessing the power of what they can do, because they are what I refer to as vocal effects. They're the things that make the guitar sing for us. Okay? So it's not how fast you can do it and move on to something else. It's how much music can you squeeze out of that particular note that you're bending or whatever it is that you're doing, okay? It's really important to spend some time thinking about that a little bit when you're doing these. So I've got a bend that can go up, and then I leave. Like right there, what I'm doing is I'm bending the 7 up, and then I'm going to the 5 on the second string. I could bend it up and down and then go to that same 5. So again, when I'm soloing, when I'm moving around, I might just bend it up and then move away, or I might bend it up and bring it back down. Okay? Now again, you'll be able to watch this video again if you'd like to and take notes if you need to. Now, the next thing we're going to do with that bend is we're going to do what's called a pre-bend or a ghost bend. And what that is when you bend the string up without playing it, and then you pick it when it's at its peak, and you bring it back down. So think like Funk 49 by James Gang, right? Which is just a really great sounding bend. You bend it up and you bring it back down. Okay? Now again, it takes some time. The first thing is to do is to get used to how to do the bend. Then you can start exploring all the creativity that goes within the bend, but the first thing you got to do is get comfortable with it. And I see some people in the chat talking about how their fingers hurt or their forearms hurt. Again, I get that. It's going to happen a little bit until you get used to it, and you train those fingers and those muscles a little bit. But again, you might try a little bit thinner guitar string to see if that might aid you until you get this whole thing moving better. As far as small hands go, I could almost guarantee I've got smaller hands than just about everybody that's on this video right now. It just takes time to get used to how to do this. Again, because my hands are so small, you'll see when I go to grab this, I'm literally up against the bottom of the guitar right now. But it's just a matter of turning, like a doorknob, turning it up. Okay? So if I'm sitting at this angle, the problem is, if you think about it, a lot of times you can play chords like a G or something, and you're sitting at this angle, you don't have enough, you can't really grab on. So you kind of got to put your thumb over the top, like a fulcrum up on top here, and then that way you can turn like that. Okay? So anyway, that's the kind of technique that you're going to use, but now what we're going to do is we're going to look at some different bends. And again, I don't want to waste your time, just show you some different things that you can have some fun with. So the next thing we're going to do is look at what we call a half-step bend. Now, half-step bends are really, really great. They don't occur naturally in a pentatonic scale because a pentatonic scale doesn't have any half steps. So we need to add something in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up to the second string. We have 5 and 8. Okay, and we know now that we're going to bend that 8 up a whole step or 2 frets. Okay, well the next thing we're going to do is we're going to actually add in the note 7, the 7th fret of the second string, which is not pentatonic, but that's okay. It's a wonderful note to use when you're soloing. What we want to do is bend that up a half step to become the 8. See how I could play that 7 and bend it up a half step? And then move into the 8, and it sounds really nice. Those are 2 really great bends that you can use alone or together, however you like to play. Like right there, I played 5, 8, 7. I'm just going to bend it up and bring it back down. And then down to this 5. See? So bends can be really long. You might play something where you want a really long bend, and sometimes you just want something subtle. It just sounds really nice in between. It's very melodic. Okay? So half-step bends, again, they have a purpose. They're bending up to another note that fits in whatever scale you're playing. Okay? But it's a half-step. So again, the art of the bend is really the same. You may use less fingers because it's only a half step, so maybe you're only using 2 fingers or something. But you want to make sure that you bend it up high enough so you're in tune. That's the key with bending all the way around, is make sure that you stay in tune, okay? Another bend to look at is what's referred to as a blues bend, okay? Now, blues bends are really, really fun. And blues bends are a little bit different because a blues bend is like taking a string and just giving it a little kick right before you leave. So it's not a big bend, and it actually goes against everything I just said. It's not a bend that is in tune. We're not bending up a half step or a whole step or anything like that. All we're doing is just giving it a little bit of a kick. Let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to play a little phrase on the guitar, and then what I'm going to do is show you the blues bend at the end. So I do something like this. That little kick at the end. What I'm doing is I'm playing the 5th fret of the 3rd string right now, although you could do anything, okay? So 5th fret of the 3rd string, and I'm just going to play it, and when I'm ready to leave, right before I leave, I'm just going to give it a little pull and stop the string. So you don't want to do it early and leave it up, because then you just sound like you're out of tune, okay? You want to do it, right? And you don't have to do it right away. You can stay on that note as long as you want. And then right before you leave, you just give it a little kick. So it's a really neat thing to use, and we call it a blues bend, okay? Now the last one I want to show you is a 3-fret bend, and 3-fret bends always remind me of like Hotel California. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to find, if we're in the key of A, for instance, this is a nice little trick that you can use. If you're in the key of A playing pentatonic, what you do is find one of the A's, which is the root. So I'm going to go up to the 10th fret of the 2nd string, which is A. I'm going to go up to that 10th fret, and I'm going to bend that up 3 frets. Okay? Now, why do I have to bend up 3 frets? Well, think about it. If I go to the 5th fret, I can show you this pentatonically. If I go to the 5th fret of the 1st string, which is an A, and I want to bend this to the next available pentatonic note, it's way up here on the 8th fret. I got to bend 1, 2, 3 frets to get from here to here. That's what I'm doing. I'm just doing it on the 10th fret of the 2nd string. Instead, they're the same note. So I want to bend that up until I hear that sound. So again, the point is there's so many different ways to manipulate notes on the fretboard that they have less to do with the scale and the theory and all those sorts of things. It really just comes down to learning how to sing and create, a melodic situation on your fretboard by using these various techniques like bending and, again, vibrato, sliding, all this different stuff. So I strongly encourage you to have some fun with these things. Again, when I teach lessons, it seems like everybody is always in such a hurry to try and do everything when they play. They've been studying all these things, and I get it. I've done it a million times myself. But part of it is when you play something, try and learn how to make it interact with the music that you're playing over, and pay attention to how it's sounding. Because if it's sounding really great, don't leave, right? Stay there, enjoy what you're doing, and then take off and do something else. So these bends are just really, really important for you to practice and see what kind of cool stuff you can come up with. So again, you can watch this video again. Please subscribe. Please share if you can. If you're interested in learning more of this stuff, you can always head over to GuitarZoom.com and take a look at what we've got available and see if there's something that we can help you with. So take care and practice hard. And the big thing is just stay positive. Okay? Don't get stressed out about this stuff. If it starts stressing you out, take a break, go eat some pizza or something, and then come back and give it a try again. But take your time. Make it sound good, all right? All right, take care, everybody.